6 minutes to 9 is the time. Do you know it's been 50 years since the children's television programme Why Don't You suggested that kids should switch off their TVs and do something less boring instead?
And now it's not something we're asking you to do right now. You can if you want to. It's a free world.
No, don't. Instead, why don't you watch this report from Jane McCubbin? She's been reminiscing with a rather famous show producer.
70s kids, brace yourselves. Nostalgia trip incoming. 50 years ago, a brand new kids' TV programme landed, and it did the unthinkable. It told kids to turn the telly off.
Why don't you?
In the golden age of kids' TV, this was a big deal. Do you remember a programme called... It was a programme about keeping the kids entertained in the holidays, an age-old problem. Can you remember Why Don't You?
Yes. Yes. Why don't you turn the TV off and do something useful instead?
Nearly.
Why don't you just
go outside and do something better instead?
Almost.
I remember it telling me to switch off my television set and do something less boring instead.
It's right. It's right. Correct.
I remember that. Is that it? Yeah.
just switch off your television set and go out and do something less boring instead?
That title was a bit long-winded for the Radio Times, so in the listings they helpfully abbreviated to a much simpler WDYSOYTSAGADSLBI.
It was all about activities kind of like this. So it's going out and exploring, getting into nature, learning new things differently. So
not being bored in the summer holidays.
No.
Why don't you go?
That was the theme tune for many years. It was used so often. The film stock that it was on wore out. This is the old days. The producer told me this, Peter Charlton. It wore out. They had to commission new titles because it had worn thin.
It ran in the summer holidays from August 1973. Look closely in the titles of later editions and you'll see Russell Davies, a name which evolved into award-winning writer Russell T Davies.
Here we are, the Pink Palace.
You'll know him from this. It's a Sin.
You leave now! You don't come back!
Don't worry, I won't tell anyone.
And from writing this, Doctor Who. But this was one of his favourite ever jobs.
There's no one for the programme.
Give us a look.
Oh, good on your bag.
Well, it was radical in its own way. Don't laugh, but it's like to have regional voices. There was much less of that back then, and to have things presented by children, to give the children agency, to make a children's show presented by them. Was rare. That didn't happen back then. It led the way.
What I'm doing now is I'm getting me slices of Swiss roll and I'm putting some marmalade on. That makes a cream stick.
I think the most famous kid we ever had on is now known as Ant McPartlin, Ant of Ant and Dec, who was a 12-year-old lad in the Newcastle gang. It was delightful. It was delightful then, delightful now.
The programme was based around its bulging mailbag. The content created by its loyal audience, or so we were told.
We used to say that all the ideas were sent in via the mailbag, and there was an awful lot of mail. But actually, all that awful lot of mail, 99% of that mail told you how to make Rice Krispie cakes. That's the only thing anyone ever sent in. Have you ever thought of making a Rice Krispie cake with chocolate? Yes, we have.
Boy, can you guess how I got that egg in the bottle?
No. Philip, I don't know and I don't care. Come on in, let's go.
I used to have to steal ideas. I used to go into bookshops and look at quiz books, game books and things like that and put them on screen and then invent a name saying that Susan Thomas from Bristol sent this in. So,
The secret is
lies.
out.
It was lies.
Scott, can you hear me?
Under Davis's watch, viewing figures exploded to over 3 million. But in 1995, it was all over. After 42 series, the BBC put its boot through the Why Don't You screen. It was decommissioned, a moment some fans were happy to recreate in the name of nostalgia.
The TV screen is right.
There is an armchair. I just wonder if we could just set up that shot.
Oh,
you don't listen.
no,
you're the star.
Let's not. I'll tell you why. Because for the rest of my life, that's the clip that'll get played. If I die tomorrow, that'll be what they use.
With the superimposed.
I
Yeah,
know.
you're probably right.
Sorry.
Actually, no, that's fine. Thank you so much for your time, though.
Pleasure.
You're watching BBC Breakfast. Time now is 8:59.
So the wait is over. Students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are finding out how they've done in their GCSE and vocational exams.
So it's first year. The results in England are expected to be back to what they were before the pandemic. Our Midlands correspondent Phil Mackey is at a school in Coventry for us now. So Phil, there'll be lots of questions about the big statistics and all the changes more generally. But right there in that room, it's about the here and now, isn't it?
Absolutely, and they've been staggering the people coming in, so there are still people coming in now, even though the first results were opened at 8 o'clock. There are still some people coming in and opening their envelopes behind me right now, and it's been one of those days that you'll have seen unfold over the years. You probably remember it happening to yourself, and certainly more recently for your own children or whatever. And you know, a nerve-wracking day. Some have done better than expected, some worse. I think we know that the big picture is that marks are slightly down nationally, but here it feels like people here have taken that into account in terms of predictions, and one or two, perhaps more than that, have probably done better than expected. But it's been a hard slog for lots of students across the country, many of whom have had to overcome particular hardships, as our education correspondent Elaine Dunkley reports.
For those taking GCSEs, there have been different challenges.
Studying in a hotel was quite difficult because you have one room. It was quite difficult to revise.